Hello, guys. It's Lydia. I'm back after a bit of a hiatus. I was off last week. So originally, the goal was to do a live stream every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. But I have quite a bit going on. So I think I'm going to do it like other every other Sunday. I think that should work for me because I'm doing A Course in Miracles daily. I'm also part of the Brahma Kumaris Spiritual University, and I'm practicing that as well in order to become more spirit or soul conscious as opposed to body and worldly conscious. So I'm doing that, but I'm also working on getting my astrology business off the ground. And then, guys, I am also going to be working. So I'm also starting a business as a healthcare freelance writer. My background is in healthcare. I'm an RN. I've been an RN for about 10 years. 10 years, yeah, a little over 10 years. So I am going to be venturing into healthcare freelance writing. So like those are two businesses that I'm working on. And then I have all my spiritual work. So I just wanted to like give you an update. I think I am going to make it like the live stream every other week. I think that would work well for me. Also, yes, that would work well for me. And then just do like little regular uploads throughout the week of anything that catches my eye about A Course in Miracles. Yeah, so let's see. I have a little list of stuff I wanted to talk to you guys about. So, okay, so I am continuing A Course in Miracles, which I think the first time I read A Course in Miracles, it was like 2011, 2012, sometime around there. It took me about a year and a half to do the whole workbook. And I thought it was profound then, but there were some parts of it that my ego self was not yet ready to, like my ego mind was not yet ready to accept. So I had to, so I put it away, but I always kept A Course in Miracles in mind. I always kept the thought system in mind. I would periodically, like throughout the past few years since I've done the course, like listen to lectures from Kenneth Wapnick. I go back and listen to those, or I go see Marianne Williamson speak for those in New York City. I'm not sure how often she's doing it now, especially since she's running for president. But she would, like every Tuesday night, she would speak at one of the churches in Manhattan. I can't remember what the name of the church is. You have to look on her website to see if she's still doing it. But she would do live lectures about A Course in Miracles and like related to current events often. And it's the church that Donald Trump actually grew up in. And I can't remember the name of it. I think Vincent Peale, he's pretty famous. And like the spiritual Christian community. I think he was the reverend there. If I'm not getting my spiritual figure, my reverends mixed up here. But I would do that, and I would listen to like Gary Renard interviews and stuff like that, just to keep it fresh in my mind. Because I knew the thought system that the course talks about, it's the same. It's a same thought system, and the thought system of the world. Even though I was still attached to it, even though I am still attached to it, I knew it was an insane thought system. So here I am back again. I reached that point where I realized there must be a better way to be in the world, to have and maintain a peaceful mind. And so, yes, I came back to the course. I'm doing the workbook. I am now on like lesson 18, I think. Lesson 17, 18, somewhere around there. And I am doing I have a weekly group, not big, but just a friend and myself. We're reading the text together, one chapter a week, and we're doing the workbook, daily lessons. And indeed, like, I understand it at such, like, at a much deeper level than when I originally read the course. I think there are parts of myself that are tired of seeking outside of myself, and I'm ready to look within and to start that journey to awakening. And I'm ready to face that fear, and to let go of the self and the attachments that I've made here. And what I like about A Course in Miracles is it's like a gentle, you're doing it with Jesus and the Holy Spirit, and it's like a gentle, it's a gentle letting go. And the fear that comes up when you confront losing your ego identity, the text and the lessons, and also the group that I'm a part of with my friend, having someone to discuss it with, that gently helps you along the journey, to letting go of identification with the ego, and to allow yourself to identify with your true, to identify with what is true, and that's your identity as spirit. Yes, and I am also I mentioned earlier, I'm also currently studying at Brahma Kumaris Spiritual University, and I'll make sure to put the link in the description, because their centers are all over the world, and they're free. A good friend of mine initially told me about Brahma Kumaris World Spiritual University. I think she's from the Philippines, and she initially started going to their centers over in the Philippines. And they're in New York City, and they're in most of the cities in the US, I think. You can take a look at their website, and it's free. And they start off with teaching you how to meditate. And I'm currently in a class that sort of teaches you how to look at the world in very similar to what A Course in Miracles teaches you, although it doesn't use the same terminology, and it doesn't deal with guilt as A Course in Miracles does. But it's very similar to, like, the Eastern religions, and that they teach you about it's like they teach you like the non-dualistic thought system, and the ego, seeing beyond, how to see beyond the ego and the world of form, and the body consciousness that we are so identified with. And it's like a teaching similar to A Course in Miracles of how to identify with what they call soul consciousness, although A Course would call that spirit, identifying with spirit, or remembering our true identity as spirit, I guess, is how Jesus put it. Yeah, and Brahma Kumaris really is like it teaches a form of meditation that focuses on identity as souls as opposed to bodies. I sort of said that. And something interesting that we talked about in this past, the most recent class, this past Saturday, was learning how to maintain your mental and spiritual peace, and your mental well-being. The sister Rona, who I'm taking classes under, she taught us about how to use your 8 spiritual powers. And the book that I bought is written by a guy, Anthony Strano. Apparently he's been really involved with Brahma Kumaris. And I just want to read some of the spiritual, I haven't even read this book yet. We talked about it in class, but I just want to read these off to you. Some of the inner powers that we are being taught to become familiar with in ourselves, to cultivate, and and how to access those things at times where, at all times, regardless of what's going on outside, what seems to be going on outside in the world of form and changes. Learning how to access and maintain that inner peace by using your 8 inner powers. And just to read them off to you, the first one is the power of introspection. The second one is the power of discernment. The third is the power of decision making. The fourth is the power of courage. The fifth is the power of letting go. The sixth is the power of tolerance. The seventh is the power of adjustment. And the eighth is the power of cooperation. And we also discussed, she gave us tips on how to consistently live a spiritual lifestyle. And I'll just share some of what she shared with us, with you guys. Number one, regular meditation in the AM and PM. I've started doing that. Number two, study spiritual knowledge every day. So for me, it's a course. I'm a Course in Miracles. I'm doing that every day. I am adopting the thought system of the course. Yeah. Number three, maintaining a purity of thoughts, words, and actions. Number four, and that comes generally, you do that more and more, the more you adopt a spiritual, peaceful mindset. Number four, use one of the basic values in everyday life. Use one of your basic values in everyday life. It's like a spiritual value that you might hold is nonviolence, because you understand what I do to another in word and form, I do to myself. So using one of those, so maintaining a spiritual journal is also something that she recommended that we do. And like maybe in the morning, writing down which spiritual value you will practice today. And I think that would be really good for me in conjunction with the course and anyone else who's like doing the workbook. Spiritual diary, I talked about that just now. Waking and sleeping and eating naturally. So many of us, we stay up till like 12, and then, we wake up later than we should and I've lived this, and I can attest to this myself. Like waking up at like 6 in the morning is, some even earlier. Some people recommend waking up at 4. They say that's when the mind is most alert. But you have to really go to bed at like early. If you want to get 7-8 hours of sleep. But I guess you don't really need 7 to 8. I don't know. I'm off on a tangent. But waking and sleeping and eating with the body's natural rhythms. Number 7, using soul conscious vision when relating to others. That is certainly true. And that's something that the course helps me to do in the classes at Brahma Kumaris and meditation. It helps to, I always say, it's seeing beyond the form to the spirit, the truth of the spirit that lies in others. And thought control. So like for a minute, each hour, and just monitoring your thoughts is like traffic control, getting them, under control by sitting and observing. And it's like a form of mini meditation, just a calmness. Otherwise, the monkey mind can get carried away. Yeah, so those are some of the things that I'm doing. And I recommend Brahma Kumaris to anybody who has the centers in their city. And, it's free, and it's spiritual help that I think the world needs. I certainly needed it. So, okay. So I want to start off, I'm going to be talking about the forgotten song today, chapter 21, section 1, and also the introduction before the forgotten song. But I wanted to just mention something that really caught my eye and touched me this week. And that's lesson 12 on page 19 of the workbook. I am upset because I see a meaningless world. And this really caused like a form of shock, but also recognition of of the ego thought system that I identify with, and how twisted it is. So the first paragraph, page 19, the importance of this idea lies in the fact, I am upset because I see a meaningless world is the lesson. So the first paragraph, page 19, the importance of this idea lies in the fact that it contains a correction for a major perceptual distortion. You think that what upsets you is a frightening world, or a sad world, or a violent world, or an insane world. All these attributes are given it by you. The world is meaningless in itself. And that is true. The world is meaningless, and we each give it the meaning. We each give everything in life the meaning that it has for us. Okay. Then I'm going to jump ahead to the fifth paragraph at the top of page 20. What is meaningless is neither good nor bad. Why then should a meaningless world upset you? If you could accept the world as meaningless and let the truth be written upon it for you, it would make you indescribably happy. But because it is meaningless, you are impelled to write upon it what you would have it be. It is this you see in it. So all the anger, because I know the world is meaningless. That's something that, the course taught me years ago, and then I sort of repressed, stashed back into my subconscious mind, and I was faced again with it when I was doing Landmark, which is like this transformational self-development course that I also recommend. But here it is, then I was in a group set, this huge group setting. I was, and doing these exercises, I was confronted with that truth. But here it is again, staring me in the face. And it's the truth that the anger and the fear, the lack, the anxiety, the separation, the guilt that I feel on a daily basis, I feel that because I want to feel it. Because the truth is that God is love, and we remain one in heaven. And it's a love that we can't even begin to understand. We could not, feeling lack, hatred, sadness, and in heaven is impossible. It doesn't exist. But we understanding that I create that in order to hang on to my ego identity, because anger, lack, separation, guilt, fear, those are the feelings that prove that I am separate from God, that I destroyed heaven with the separation, and that the ego lives and has triumphed over God. And so the lack, the sadness that any of us feel in this world, we feel it because that's what we chose to feel. That's the meaning that we chose to give it in order to hang on to our ego identity. And because the world in and of itself, it is meaningless, meaningless, meaningless. And so learning to just perceive things, learning to just perceive things as they are, it's like learning to perceive things without meaning. It's so hard for the mind. Like there's this, like if you watch your own mind, there's this this urge to judge and to analyze and to judge against someone. It says at another point in the Course in Miracles that judgment is the ego's bread and butter. And so facing that about myself and realizing that the misery that I'm feeling is something that I chose to feel. Because again, the world is meaningless in and of itself. So the mind, I'm only on chapter 2. I'm about to start chapter 3, and I'm only on lesson 18. But I believe in another part of the course, Jesus talks about how the mind is going to choose meaning, but it has to choose between either the ego's meaning, which is what, I have been giving things, in order to maintain the illusion of separation, or the Holy Spirit's meaning, which is Holy Spirit will always give a meaning of wholeness. So yeah. And I'm realizing that all these things that I've experienced in my life, the fear of losing I'm coming up against, and I'm recognizing it for what it is. Fear of losing my identity, the fear of merging with another, the fear of lowering my defenses, and understanding that defenses are the first act of war. Defenses do what they would defend against, because it's saying there's something out there that can hurt you that you're separate from. Those are all manifestations of my own desire to remain a separate individual, and to believe that the separation actually happened. And that, yes, in order to, for most of us, I'm not talking about the enlightened beings out there, but for most of us who are still on that journey to awakening, coming to grips with your own ego thought system, it's not easy. I think in chapter 2, Jesus talks about how we have to look at the altar that we fear we defiled, and looking at our judgments, and looking at our own thought system that we identify with. I sort of think that's part of that. Oh yeah, and so this has inspired me to return to like freshening up on like quantum physics and science and whatnot, because especially with the friend that I am doing the course with now, who I have the weekly meeting with, I think like the ego mind, the left brain is always asking why and how. So I think having an understanding of quantum physics helps you to sort of reconcile the falseness of perception and seeing with the body's eyes to the truth of spiritual sight. And so quantum physics, science, I had to brush up on this, remember that science has proven that everything is connected. 2 particles millions of miles away from each other are in sync with each other. Well, how is that? It's because they're the same thing. The space between them, the empty space that seems to be between them, is really illusion. Remembering that space is not empty, and that it can twist and turn and bend, and that space is like the fabric that serves as the stage for the world, the movie of the world. It's like the setting. So remembering that, and what that brought to mind is how Jesus says the world is like a veil that fell over the truth. And understanding the role that space and time, which are separation devices, understanding the part that they play in the dream of separation. And also understanding how the brain works, and how we never directly interact with the outside world. Everything that we see is an interpretation of the electrical signals that the brain receives from our senses. And so we never really see, nobody knows if what we're seeing out in the world is really there, because we're all dependent on the brain's interpretation of what is out there. We can never interact with it directly. And of course, as A Course in Miracles explains, the body was made as a separation device and to blind us from the truth. It actually filters down consciousness to being dependent on, only the information that the 5 senses can interpret. And, we're basically just, we're blind and um, living in a dream world, basically living in a matrix. Um, that's not real. Okay, I've also been observing. I talked about that, observing my own mind. Yeah, observing my own mind and how it works, and whatnot. So I wanted to get to chapter 21, the forgotten song. Let me open it up here. And I just want to go through that. It's not, the forgotten song is not really that long, but I have been meditating to the forgotten song. Now there is a channel on YouTube that reads off the different passages of A Course in Miracles, but it does it with music. And the forgotten song, I can't remember the name of the channel, but I'll post it in the description. I think it's ACIM Inspiration or something like that. But the forgotten song is one of those clips that they read off, and it's set to this beautiful music. And for those that meditate, I recommend, and who are into the course, I really do recommend meditating to that passage with that music. And it has certainly caused me to think deeply about what it's saying. So without further ado, let's get started. I'm going to start with the introduction that is actually on page 445. So the introduction: projection makes perception. The world you see is what you gave it, nothing more than that. But though it is no more than that, it is not less. Therefore, to you it is important. It is the witness to your state of mind, the outside picture of an inward condition. As a man thinketh, so does he perceive. Therefore, seek not to change the world, but choose to change your mind about the world. Perception is a result and not a cause. And that is why order of difficulty in miracles is meaningless. Everything looked upon with vision is healed and holy. Nothing perceived without it means anything. And where there is no meaning, there is chaos. So projection makes perception. We sort of talked about that. The world you see is what you gave it, nothing more than that. The meaning what we see in the world and the meaning that we give it, that's what our mind has chosen to see. And it's a result of the choice for separation. The world isn't a witness to the inner state of mind, to your own inward state of mind. Therefore, seek not to change the world, but choose to change your mind about the world. So the world is the screen, the movie that's playing out, but the projector is in our own mind. And so trying to change the world is pointless, because that's the ego's version of changing the world. You're playing around with illusions out there. But if you want to change anything, you have to change your mind. You have to go back to the mind, the projector, and change your mind about the world. And everything looked upon with vision, spiritual vision, is healed and holy. Nothing perceived without it means anything. And where there is no meaning, there is chaos. Where there is no meaning, that's where the ego rushes in to give it its own meaning. And the ego will always give it the meaning of separation. And from that, a split mind continues to split, and you have division between different groups, based on race, culture, political affiliation, tribe. You have just a chaotic world. And look at the world we have now. Damnation is your judgment on yourself, and this you will project upon the world. See it as damned and all you see is what you did to hurt the Son of God. If you behold disaster and catastrophe, you try to crucify him. If you see holiness and hope, you joined the will of God to set him free. There is no choice that lies between these two decisions, and you will see the witness to the choice you made and learn from this to recognize which one you chose. The world you see but allows you how much joy, the world you see but shows you how much joy you have allowed yourself to see in you and to accept as yours. And if this is its meaning, then the power to give it joy must lie within you. So the thought of separation, when we choose the thought of separation, we choose the thought that we destroyed heaven, we destroyed God, and we have successfully become individuals. And there is guilt and judgment that comes with that. And so what the mind does is in order to it can't really, in order to not have to face that guilt, it projects it outward into the world. And so when we choose separation, we choose to identify with that, but we project the guilt out onto the world. And when we make other people guilty, it's really because we're projecting and accusing them of what we ourselves believe that we did. So when we choose to see with the Holy Spirit's vision, it's a sign that the mind has chosen to identify with the Holy Spirit's thought system, with forgiveness, with the fact that the separation never happened, and that we've never sinned. We choose our innocence. So what you see, the meaning that what is happening in your world and the meaning that you're giving the world is always going to be a barometer and a reflection of your own internal thought system. Okay. The forgotten song, paragraph 1. Never forget the world the sightless see must be imagined, for what it really looks like is unknown to them. They must infer what could be seen from evidence forever indirect and reconstruct their inferences as they stumble and fall because of what they did not recognize, or walk unharmed through open doorways that they thought were closed. And so it is with you. You do not see. Your cues for inference are wrong, and so you stumble and fall down upon the stones you did not recognize, but fail to be aware you can go through the doors you thought were closed, but which stand open before unseen eyes, waiting to welcome you. So again, we don't really see anything with the body's eyes. The body is a device of separation, a projected device of the thought of separation that was made to blind us to the truth. And so we're all walking around here sightless and believing that we're these individual separated egos. And we must infer what could be seen from evidence forever indirect. Again, that's sort of what I was touching on earlier about how we never interact with the outside world directly. It's always what is out there is always being filtered by the brain. The brain is telling us what is out there through the electrical signals that the senses receive from light. And so we don't really know what's out there. So we have to, our senses are, that's what it means by our senses. Like we must infer what could be seen from evidence forever indirect. We're not directly in touch with the world as it is. We don't even know what the real world looks like. Paragraph 2. How foolish is it to attempt to judge what could be seen instead? It is not necessary. How foolish is it to attempt to judge what could be seen instead? It is not necessary to imagine what the world must look like. It must be seen before you recognize for what it for you recognize it for what it is. You can be shown which doors are open, and you can see where safety lies, and which way leads to darkness, which to light. Judgment will always give you false directions, but vision shows you where to go. Why should you guess? So as long as we continue to judge with the ego, we choose, well, as long as we continue to judge in order to exclude and separate, we'll forever be at the mercy of the ego and will be blind. You cannot, judgment and the separation that results from that is not reality. Reality is true spiritual vision, true spiritual sight, wholeness, the Holy Spirit, seeing things with the Holy Spirit's vision, giving things the meaning of the Holy Spirit, which will, gradually open up our spiritual sight, and we'll be able to see the real world instead of, the matrix created world the ego created matrix that we're stuck in. Yeah. Anyway, paragraph. I was just, because that reminded me of the scene in the Matrix where Morpheus is Neo has been unplugged from the Matrix, and how Neo's like, my eyes hurt, and Morpheus like, you've never used them before. And then another part of the Matrix, he goes, welcome to the real world. Anyway, paragraph 3. There is no need to learn through pain, and gentle lessons are acquired joyously and are remembered gladly. What gives you happiness you want to learn and not forget. It is not this you would deny. Your question is whether the means by which this course is learned. Let me see. It is not this you would deny. What gives you happiness you want to learn and not forget. It is not this you would deny. Your question is whether the means by which this course is learned will bring to you the joy it promises. If you believed it would, the learning of it would be no problem. You are not a happy learner yet because you still remain uncertain that vision gives you more than judgment does, and you have learned that both you cannot have. I can attest to this. I know that I am scared to give up my judgment. And I recently saw a video with David Hoffmeister where he was talking about the fear that we all eventually come up against on the spiritual path of giving away our judgments and our identification with our judgments, and learning to trust the Holy Spirit's vision as opposed to our own. And there's certainly a measure of ego and thinking, my judgment could be more accurate than the Holy Spirit's vision. And I have to ask myself, what is my own judgment? Where has that gotten me in the past? Am I happy? Do I have the peace of God? No. So at some point we do have to trust, and we have to give up control and surrender to the Holy Spirit's guidance and vision. And it's not easy to do. Paragraph 4. The blind become accustomed to their world by their adjustments to it. They think they know their way about in it. They learned it not through joyous lessons, but through the stern necessity of limits they believed they could not overcome. And still believing this, they hold those lessons dear and cling to them because they cannot see. They do not understand the lessons keep them blind. This they do not believe. And so they keep the world they learn to see, quote unquote, in their imagination, believing that their choice is that or nothing. They hate the world they learn through pain, and everything they think is in it serves to remind them that they are incomplete and bitterly deprived. I really love this paragraph. The blind become accustomed to their world by their adjustments to it. They learned it not through joyous lessons, but through the stern necessity of limits they believed they could not overcome. So, who here does not think of themselves as lacking and limited? There's a little me syndrome that we all have. And to think that we have accepted this as our identity. It's like it's a poverty mindset. And here Jesus is saying, you're so much more than that. You're so much more than that. You know, we are greater than the sun and the stars. We are greater than the universe. As our true identity, in our true identity as a oneness, joined as one, you know, back home with God. But you know, we still, there's still a part that wants to hang on to the ego thought system, even though, like the story of the prodigal son when he left, you know, even though it's like a squandering, identifying with the ego thought system is a squandering of our inheritance. It's it's choosing to live in poverty instead of recognizing the richness, the timelessness, the beauty of our spiritual, of our true spiritual identities. It's choosing lack, and it's a crazy thought system when you think about it. Even though we all identify with it, but it's choosing lack, pain, anger, fear over peace, love, abundance. And you can see this, you know, by looking at the meanings, that the feelings that you feel and the meanings that you give the things in the world. You know, just observe your thought system, observe your mind and your thought system. And it's hard to get away from that truth. If peace of mind is ever disturbed, that's the ego. Okay, paragraph 5. Thus they define their life and where they live, adjusting to it as they think they must, afraid to lose the little that they have. And so it is with all who see the body as all they have and all their brothers have. They try to reach each other and they fail and fail again. And they adjust to loneliness, believing that to keep the body is to save the little that they have. Listen and try to think if you remember what we will speak of now. So the identification with the body as who you really are, that is a poverty mindset and it's delusion. The choice to identify as a body instead of spirit, we hurt ourselves when we do that. We separate ourselves. We make ourselves small. And we can never truly connect with each other through the body. Bodies cannot join. They're symbols of separation. Paragraph 6. Listen. Perhaps you catch a hint of an ancient state not quite forgotten. Dim perhaps, and yet not altogether unfamiliar. Like a song whose name is long forgotten, and the circumstances in which you heard completely unremembered. Not the whole song has stayed with you, but just a little wisp of melody, attached not to a person or a place or anything particular. But you remember from just this little part how lovely was the song, how wonderful the setting where you heard it, and how you loved those who were there and listened with you. You know, this reminds me when Jesus talks about a melody. You know, it reminds me of a couple of near-death experiences that I heard in the past. And they both mentioned, like, there was this music, this beautiful music. And the music that we have here, even the most beautiful classical music, or you know, your the most beautiful music you've heard, it pales in comparison to the music of heaven. And they described hearing this music, and one woman described it as being sung from like all these, what she perceived as these trillions of different lights, and light beyond what we think of as light, you know, brighter than the sun, brighter than the light of the sun. So it was these songs being sung from these what appeared to be billions of lights, to this one larger light. She interpreted as it was like these lights were spirits that were singing to the one divine spirit, which is God. So that reminded me of that. Okay, so paragraph 7. The notes are nothing, yet you have kept them with you, not for themselves, but as a soft reminder of what would make you weep if you remember how dear it was to you. You could remember, yet you are afraid, believing you will lose the world you learned since then. And yet you know that nothing in the world you learned is half so dear as this. Listen and see if you remember an ancient song you knew so long ago and held more dear than any melody you taught yourself to cherish since. And I just want to say that reminds me, in one of my landmark courses, it was a landmark advanced course that I took, we had to do an exercise called Be With You. And in it, you had to stand opposite someone else in total silence and stare into their eyes. And it was like it lasted for longer than 10 minutes. And you had to stand there. You couldn't move. You couldn't shift your eyes. You had to stand there and peer into another's eyes. And so I was paired with a guy who on the surface, on the level of form, on the level of form that the ego uses as a veil to hide the truth. On the level of form, we looked like we would have nothing in common, that, you know, we were totally different from each other. You never picture us out together. He was an older man. And while looking into his eyes, I swear I recognized myself. Like I saw it. You know, that saying that the eyes are the window to the soul. It's very true. That's why, you know, looking in someone's eyes is considered to be so intimate, such an intimate thing. And it's not something that we do with anybody. Again, the ego making differences and specialness. I can look you in the eye, but I'm not close enough to you to look you in the eye. I'm not close enough to you to have that intimate contact. But here, somebody that I probably ordinarily, you know, wouldn't have a relationship with, I had to look into his eyes in complete silence for over 10 minutes. And I saw myself. I recognized myself peering back at me. And it was a really profound exercise. And, you know, a lot of people cried during this. I could feel myself tearing up. But again, the ego through the use of form and different forms, you know, there's like this kaleidoscope of all these different forms that we encounter in the world. We use that to hide from each other and to continue the illusion of separation. So I just wanted to talk about that. Paragraph 8. Beyond the body, beyond the sun and stars, past everything you see and yet somehow familiar, is an arc of golden light that stretches as you look into a great and shining circle. And all the circle fills with light before your eyes. The edges of the circle disappear, and what is in it is no longer contained at all. The light expands and covers everything, extending to infinity, forever shining and with no break or limit anywhere. Within it, everything is joined in perfect continuity. Nor is it possible to imagine that anything could be outside, for there is nowhere that this light is not. So the memory of this truth, of our true home, lies deep in the unconscious mind, the collective unconscious. And it's deep in the unconscious mind of everyone. It's a memory that we all share, but it's hidden from us. But if you have an experience like I had, you can when you're truly intimate with someone, when there's no noise, when you're just being in the present moment with someone, looking into their eyes, you know them. It's like, I am you. We are connected, no matter what the illusion of form tells you. Anyway. Paragraph 9. This is the vision of the Son of God, whom you know well. Here is the sight of him who knows his Father. Here is the memory of what you are, a part of this, with all of it within, and joined to all as surely as all is joined in you. Accept the vision that can show you this and not the body. You know the ancient song and know it well. Nothing will ever be as dear to you as is this ancient hymn of love the Son of God sings to his Father still. So accept this vision, the Holy Spirit's vision, instead of the ego's. And you'll know you've chosen the ego's version and you're giving the ego's meaning to things when differences and judgment come into play. Paragraph 10. And now the blind can see, for that same song they sing in honor of their Creator gives praise to them as well. The blindness that they made will not withstand the memory of this song. And they will look upon the vision of the Son of God, remembering who he is they sing of. What is a miracle but this remembering? And who is there in whom this memory lies not? The light in one awakens it in all. And when you see it in your brother, you are remembering for everyone. I think that last sentence is so powerful. So I mentioned earlier how, like, when you learn about quantum physics and how you see one particle millions of miles away from another particle, they're still in contact. And scientists who are like obsessed with the physical, they're still like confused about why that is. But if you're studying A Course in Miracles or any other form of spirituality, you know why it is. And it also reminds me of something called the 100th monkey syndrome. And I should probably have looked this up before I went live, but because I don't remember all the details exactly. And I know I'm probably getting some of my terminology fumbled and mixed up. But there's something called the 100th monkey syndrome, which scientists have observed, in that when 100 monkeys learned, or 100 monkeys, and perhaps there were other species involved as well, but I know monkeys. When 100 monkeys learned how to do something, other monkeys, the rest of the species, naturally knew how to do it. And again, it's like all minds are joined. And when you heal your own mind, you're in turn healing your brother's mind. Because in actuality, beyond the level of form, we're all one. And when you see, when you see the light, in your brother, when you recognize them for who he or she truly is, no matter their behavior on the level of form, learning to look beyond that and developing true spiritual sight and recognizing them for the pure, innocent spirit that they are. When you do that, you not only heal your own mind, but you light a fire in your brother. And I think at another point in the book, Jesus said, that it sparks something in them, even if they are not consciously able to accept it at this point in time. It is held for them until your brother is ready to receive it. And it's true. Like, just being around someone who is peaceful and calm, it affects your own energy. They serve as an example. Look at Jesus and the Buddha and how they served as examples for us. So I just love that closing sentence. The light in one awakens it in all. And when you see it in your brother, you are remembering for everyone. And so I think that's it for me. I have to go and get some things and the illusory worlds of form done. So yeah, I am so glad to be back. So I think I'll be back like in another couple of weeks, just because I've got another night that I meet with my course group, and then I'm doing Brahma Kumaris, and then I'm doing my two businesses, the astrology business and the healthcare freelance writing business. So I'm a busy girl. And then I'm also changing my diet. I'm doing like the alkaline diet and learning how to cook. So there's all this other stuff going on in my life. So I think streaming live every other week, like I'd say the first and third, maybe like the first and third of the month, week of the month would be like a good way to do it. So I think that's where I'll leave things off for now. And I'm forgetting to look at the camera here. So I will see you in another couple of weeks. Let's see, what's today? Let me go to my calendar, guys. So today is February 24th. So I will see you most likely on February 10th. And that is actually, March 10th. And that is actually daylight savings time. So, all right. See you guys then. God bless. And I love you all.